Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Hurdle the Line. This is your championship weekend preview show. Oh, we're nearly at the end, Sam. We're
Three
we're so
games.
nearly at the end. Yeah, 3 games left of the season. The college football season ended on Monday. If you want to see the review show for the championship game, then you can do so on our YouTube or on the College Football UK podcast. Uh, football is ending. Or well, it's not ending, but it's going on a break. There is other football on, but it's not nearly as exciting as the NFL or college football. We can't lie. But as football season comes to a close, as we all know, head coaching jobs and GM jobs become available. So the only real bit of news I've found, I know you've got a couple of bits there, Sam, as well, is just the head coaching and GM hires. But do you want to lead with the couple of bits that you've got first, or the bit that you've
Yeah.
got first?
So I think that the main bit of, I suppose, the big bit that came out of it, obviously, we know that after the Ravens game, obviously, the way that that ended with Mark Andrews dropping, I suppose, well, he dropped two catches in that game, but obviously dropped one, the 2 point conversion, which would
Yeah,
have probably won them the game, or at least got them level. I can't remember what the final score was now. It was feels like an age ago. Um, but I think a lot of fans, it looks like a lot had actually given him a fair bit of abuse, which um, you know is not great. But I suppose the news that really came out of it was the fact that the Bills Mafia raised or have been raising money um, for the charity that Mark Andrews is very close with,
yeah,
which is I can't remember the full name of it. But I think it's T1D. I think is the title of it, which obviously
right.
is referring to the type one diabetes, with obviously Mark Andrews having type one diabetes. Um, that's the reason, obviously, why he has such a close connection to it.
Yeah,
I think it's just a nice gesture. I mean, they've obviously won the game. The Bills have won the game. I don't think it's necessarily a thank you for dropping the catch sort of thing. It's just to show support for the fact that this player has made a mistake in an unusual mistake for him
yeah,
as well, and the abuse that he's received after the game. I think and this isn't all Ravens fans. I think there are a lot of Ravens fans who've jumped to his support and shared their love for him and that. But yeah, I think it's a tough one for Mark Andrews to take, and he's come out and obviously spoken about it now with
yeah,
a big post on Instagram. But yeah, it's just nice to see that rivalries aside, fans can do things like that for charities and that. So it was a nice little uh, bit of news, I suppose, in terms of that. The only other bit of news that I've got, which is sort of related to head coaches, is the what was it? The Dolphins defensive coordinator is having or has, I would have thought by now, and certainly by the time that we release this, will have
yeah,
had an interview, in face-to-face interview for the New Orleans Saints job. There was also so that was Anthony Weaver, sorry. So yeah, defensive coordinator for the Dolphins. Giants offensive coordinator Mike Kafka is flying out tomorrow to have his in-person head coaching interview, and Mike McCarthy, the former Cowboys head coach, is expected to interview next week for the New Orleans Saints job. So it looks like we could be looking at one of those three potentially. I know that a lot of the Saints fans were hoping for Aaron Glenn, with him being,
yeah.
um, you know, a former player and stuff like that. So I think he had a lot of ties. And I think, or was he a former coach there?
He was a former coach there.
Yeah,
I can't remember off the top of
he's a
my,
former
off the,
Jets player, though, isn't he?
yeah,
He's a former Jets, but he definitely coached there before. I think a lot of people thought that he would come in. Um, bit similar to how with Dennis Allen was there. It was sort of the um, continuation of the Sean Payton era. And So I think that they were hoping for that. Obviously, that didn't happen, which we'll come on to in a bit. Um, so yeah, I think it's that there's I suppose the big news is that I have had. I just think with the Saints job being still open, I thought it was an interesting one. Um, but yes, I'll let you go on to talk about the two big ones, I suppose, and just any other news you've got for regards to head coaching Rob jobs.
Yeah. Well, we'll start, and I'll answer the thing. Well, I'll clarify a position. Well, I think you said a couple of minutes ago. Um, the couple of hires this week, both of which pertain to the Detroit Lions. Offensive coordinator Ben Johnson and defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn have both taken head coaching jobs at the Chicago Bears and New York Jets, respectively. Yes, to answer the thing you were just saying, he did play for the Saints in 2008.
Mhm.
Um, he also played for the Jags in 2000. So Aaron Glenn's career, he was drafted by the Jets, was there from 94 to 2001. Went to the Texans for a couple of years, the Cowboys for a couple of years, the Jags and the Saints for a year each. Started as a coach in Cleveland, funnily enough,
Interesting.
with the Browns as assistant DB's coach. Then went over to New Orleans as the DB's coach there under Sean Payton. And then obviously when Dan Campbell came over, he brought Aaron Glenn with him as the DC in Detroit. And now he goes back full circle. He's gone from a rookie at the Jets to the head coach of the Jets nearly 30 years later. Um, then I'll say Ben Johnson, he is now the head coach of the Chicago Bears. I have been pounding the table for the fact that Ben Johnson, he might stay. He'll probably stay, and it makes no sense for him to go. He's gone. Um,
I think my first comment was Ben Johnson's going to the Bears as well when we were talking about this coach roundabout. And I think a lot of people expected it to happen, to be fair.
yeah,
Um,
I even remember our conversation a few weeks ago on here, and I said, no, Ben Johnson might stay. And I distinctly remember you just going, Fletch, he's going. No, but the thing is, he's getting paid, so Fletch is going. Just
yeah,
just deal with it. Just deal with it now, and then when it happens, it'll hurt less. But it was quite fun. Did you watch? Obviously, Aaron Glenn was only hired officially this morning, last night, in late hours, early hours, whatever you want to call it. Did you see any of the Ben Johnson stuff though of him arriving in Chicago? Because he got hired on Monday, he was there on Tuesday, so he's had Tuesday, Wednesday, and now obviously today, Thursday, as of the time of recording to kind of get settled in. But have you seen any of the stuff from him arriving?
I haven't. No, I've seen the image, obviously, of him holding his shirt with the owner, but I've not seen anything else really around it.
Yeah, obviously among the Lions community, a number of these videos have been shared. Just it's it's a weird look. So he turns up, and obviously, as all head coaches, I like seeing these videos every year of head coaches turning up at the new job, and then everybody from like the cleaners to the social media staff and everyone's just waiting in one room, just clapping and congregating.
Clapham, yeah.
There was the one from last season, I think, where with the Seahawks, and it was weird. It just didn't. Something was dead off about it, and it just seemed really, really off. I think it was like a weird chant that they just started chanting something, and it sounded just sad. So he did that. He gave his little speech. Um, And then I watched some of his first press conference yesterday as the head coach. And he said about three things he said in his press conference. Dan Campbell said in a press conference about 3 weeks ago about Detroit. So he was one of the comments was about something Dan Campbell a few weeks ago said Detroit is a sleeping giant.
Yeah,
And
that's the
Ben
one I think's
Johnson
been
was
picked up
talking
on.
about Chicago being a sleeping giant. And look, it's you. That's who he's learned who to be a head coach off and all that sort of stuff. So you imagine there's going to be some crossover and listening and all that sort of stuff. Um, my question to you on the Ben Johnson hire is obviously, look, as you said, you brought it up a couple of times before. We've mentioned on this podcast, it does seem the most logical option in terms of if you think purely on football, the roster's already a good way built, if not mostly built. He's got a quarterback already. He's got all the things in place to potentially see almost immediate success. What I can't get over is I'm not sure if I'm upset or not that he's with a division rival. I'm not sure whether I part of me is just look, he's gone. It's a head coaching job. Good for him. I'm happy for him. The other part of me is just like, but to the Bears though.
I don't know. I think I suppose to put it for me is would I have been annoyed, say, if Mike, if Mike LaFleur was to go to the night? I wouldn't say it'd be like LaFleur going to
I'd say the
the
Cardinals.
Cardinals. Yeah, it's not the greatest, but it's not the worst. Like
Yeah,
I would if he was to go if he was it's the best of a bad situation in terms of which of the divisional rivals he can go to. I think the Bears, although they will be strong, I think going forward or have the potential to be strong going forward. I think if he was to go to the Packers, I think that would have been or the Vikings. I think that probably would have been a bit hell on. Um, but I think, like I said, the one big thing that I think comes out of this, and it is something that we need to recognise with Ben Johnson, is he did say that when he was being asked about the head coaching jobs back when he was still obviously with the Lions, he said that he would only accept a job where the team, the franchise accepted the issues in the past.
yeah,
Now, I think one of the things that probably would be said about the Bears, I do think that they, out of all the teams that needed a head coach, I think they were in the best position to be able to say that
yeah,
because they they've the one big issue which has always been on the head of the Bears is can we get a quarterback? They've never had a decent quarterback since probably. I mean, even they've had a few good ones, but they've never had like I suppose what you call maybe like a generational talent
yeah,
um, in the quarterback room, and it's always been their Achilles heel is having an offense that sparkles. And I think knowing that the way that the defense is, and they've got if they can keep the defensive coordinator and or even bring in someone who is a good defensive coordinator, that defense will look after you.
yeah,
It gives them Ben Johnson the ability to be able to basically go right. We're going to work with Caleb. We're going to find an offense, and he's the sort of person he'll find an offense that suits Caleb, that suits him down to the T. But then we'll also bring some of the special packages which we've seen the Lions play over the last few years,
yeah,
which will be fun. I do think I do sort of agree they are a bit of a sleeping giant, but they're also the Bears. So, there's still the ability that it could all go wrong. But
yeah,
I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be an interesting matching up. And I've always thought, in terms of as a pairing, they were so well suited because of his offensive prowess, I would say.
yeah,
And if he can I would say if he can maybe pick up a wide receiver in the draft and maybe ship out someone like Keenan Allen, I would probably be looking at that because although that means you've still bringing in another wide receiver, do they really need Keenan Allen? I mean, DJ Moore is still a very good wide receiver one. Rome Odunze has proven himself he can be a wide receiver two, if not a wide receiver one. And I think there's the option to go and maybe pick up a fairly decent wide receiver, and maybe sort of fix that O line. What might be the first port of call, I suppose.
yeah,
But I like it as a matchup. Obviously, I know for you it's a bit bittersweet. So seeing him go to a rival, but also at the same time, it's you know it could be worse. He could go to a different team, one of the other
yeah,
teams in your division, or just someone like a Raiders, which would just kill his career.
yeah. No, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. The fun thing about what that how Dan Campbell's built his staff, like obviously you bring certain people over and whatnot from previous jobs. It's always worth noting that one thing that Dan Campbell put together with his roster is it's primarily roster with his coaching staff is it's primarily made up of previous players and
Mm.
ex-players and how he believes. that's the key to getting to know and understand players and having the players immediately respect you because you've been in their cleats. Um, Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn actually played together in 2005 at the Cowboys
Mm,
before meeting again in New Orleans. And then, so I'm sorry, and then Ben Johnson, he was actually in Miami from 2012 to 2017, 18 even, of which, of course, during that time, Dan Campbell was a coach, tight ends coach, and then became their assistant head coach and tight ends coach, and also even served as interim head coach for a couple of weeks, for a few games. So they'd met in Miami, and then as much as I don't want to say his name, there are a couple of things he did that genuinely helped this franchise going forward for their next coach. Matt Patricia brings in Ben Johnson to the Lions in 2019 as offensive quality control coach. He then went to be the tight ends coach, then was our passing game coordinator in 2021. That was the first year of Dan Campbell. And then he gets promoted to OC after we fired Anthony Lynn, because Anthony Lynn was our OC that first year, and
mm.
we got fired about halfway through the season. Um, and like I say, with Aaron Glenn, they met in Dallas in 2005. Obviously, Dan Campbell being a tight end towards the end of his career, mostly. And then they met again in New Orleans, where when Dan Campbell again was assistant head coach and Aaron Glenn was the DB's coach. They both of his OCs and him have a long history together. They've known each other for a long time. It's always good to see good friends and people you've known for a long time go and succeed in the NFL. You know it's hard. But what about Aaron Glenn to the Jets? What did you think of that hire?
I I honestly don't know what to make of it because I think that decision hinges on what Aaron Rodgers decides to do. Because obviously Aaron Glenn is a defensive coordinator by
Yeah,
trade. He's very defensive minded. If you're looking at it from that perspective, in terms of he's going to basically be running the defense, that defense is already quality. Yes, there's a few aging pieces, but maybe if we can get a few good players, maybe sort a few of the. I think probably the D line will probably need fixing because obviously, I think is it Quincy Williams
yeah,
or is is coming to the end of his career, so maybe there might be a few pieces to fix there. So in terms of the defense, that I think there'll be quality. My big concern with him being head coach is what happens on the offensive side of it, in
yeah,
terms of who he brings in as his offensive coordinator, whether he keeps the same one that's there or whether he brings in someone new, um, and whether Aaron Rodgers is going to be there or not. Because I think if Aaron Rodgers is going to be there, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw exactly what happened with, not to the degree that it'll happen, but someone like what happened with Robert Salah. It just kind of just everything just hampered him. He was never really able to sort of sort out the problems that he had. I think he's always had QB issues, and
yeah,
I just don't know. I don't. I'll be honest. I mean, we both don't like Aaron Rodgers. I think he's with as a nicest way possible. I think in terms of a team cohesion and team like motivation within a team and morale, he can be a bit of a cancer.
yeah,
And I try and use that word very sparingly, but he can. And you've seen what happened with the Packers in the last few years when he was there. He was killing that team
yeah,
from the inside out. And I feel that that's if Aaron Glenn wants to succeed, he needs to get rid of him, in my opinion, and maybe just treat it as we bring in someone who's a Sam Darnold who can work the offense, which we've seen he can do, or going for broke and bringing in trading up and bringing in a rookie quarterback. I just don't see Aaron Rodgers being the answer for him. If anything, he's going to be more of a hindrance. So I'll reserve my judgment on whether I think it's a good position, it's a good hire or not. I think in terms of the man, obviously he's good, but it's what happens with the Jets that worries me.
Yeah, there's clearly a lot of work to do. There's clearly a lot of different things that are gonna need to go into be it. That it's also a position that may or may not feel like a cursed position again,
Mhm.
just because of well, we're not gonna mince words here. It's the owner's an idiot.
Well,
Woody
we
Johnson
said
is an idiot.
yeah, we when we said, didn't we, that the Jets' job was going to be one of the worst to take in the NFL coming into this season, and it's just about everything about the Jets is just it doesn't feel like there's any cohesion to the decisions that they make. Bringing in Aaron Rodgers, it just felt like this guy doesn't want to be in the Packers anymore. He's a good. We're going to live off the fact that he's a MVP level quarterback without thinking about the ramifications of who he is as a
Yeah,
person and what he does to a team. And then the problem that you then have with it is the moment they brought in Aaron Rodgers, they brought in Devontae Adams, they brought in Alan Lazard, they brought in all the pieces that he wanted to make that offense what it was, and it still didn't work. And if anything, it killed probably the best wide receiver that they had at the time in Garrett Wilson. So,
yeah,
and I don't think it's done wonders for the likes of Brees Hall and Braylon Allen. So
no,
it just it's like the flip side of what we were saying about the Bears. The Bears were able to, obviously bring in Ben Johnson on the basis that they would admit to their mistakes and they would look to move forward in a fresh way with Ben Johnson. To me, the Jets will never admit to the failures that they make. And that I think, of all the jobs, this will be the hardest if Aaron Rodgers stays. If it doesn't, you may see a completely different shift, and my opinion may change. But I feel for Aaron Glenn stepping into that job, having to deal with all of those people
yeah.
and having to sort that situation out.
It's worth noting as well that not only do the Jets get Aaron Glenn from Detroit, but they've also got a third round pick from Detroit this year because they get, but we also, the Lions also get a third round pick out of this for developing a black head coach.
Okay.
Developing a black coach who goes on to be a head coach. So did the Detroit Lions get a compensatory pick for that? Um,
And the Jets get a comp pick for hiring a black head
yeah.
coach.
Um,
Do the Bears get that then?
Is Ben Johnson black? Look, I might have missed something here.
It's just the image that had him there. It looked like he was black. It might be
Right.
just the lighting, but
Um, yeah. the I wasn't sure. Like the important
that's
bit there
because
is
I'm
not the
mixing up the people who I'm talking about. It's confusing me because the guy who's holding the jersey is not Ben Johnson, and I've looked at it very quickly,
Ryan.
so
I think
that's
it's
why
Ryan
it's
Poles.
confusing.
Is it Ryan
Yeah, yeah,
Poles?
it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I just got them mixed up. That's my bad.
I don't blame you. Sometimes I do. It's fine. But the point I was getting on with the draft is they have pick number 7 in the draft. The Chicago
Mhm.
Bears have pick number 10. If you're looking at a potential look, this is a conversation for we're gonna have so many weeks of conversations about this, so we're not gonna hold too much onto it right now. But you may have your pick of a rookie QB there. You may have your options to bring in someone potentially even in that second round or even third round, depending on who falls and when and how, because we're all aware this may not be the best QB draft. This may
Yeah,
be one where it's more you bring someone in who needs a
it,
bit of developing and you're
it's
in
a
a
it's a
position to do
developmental year, isn't it, for QBs? I think, but
yeah,
like I
yeah.
said, we'll come on to that at a later date.
Yeah, oh yeah, but
Once the season's finished.
like I say we'll have plenty of discussions
Yeah.
on that. In it again in that same tone, they're the only two hirings that have currently been announced. I'm not aware of certain ones. The Cowboys are obviously doing their interviews. The
There's
Jags,
talks the Cowboys are going to look to hire internally. That's the news coming
I
out of
have
the
heard that.
Cowboys.
I have heard that. But obviously they'll still have to conduct certain levels of interviews and still talk. The Jags are. I want to talk about the Jags in a minute. They're a clusterfuck, but they haven't announced anyone. That job's still going. Las
Yeah.
Vegas Raiders, their job's still going. Tom Brady, I think, is currently having his heart put back into pieces. I think he's going to sit there with Detroit Lions fans. And he's going to sit, have a drink in the 313, shouting, fuck Ben Johnson. Fucking Ben Johnson. Because even during the game on Saturday, you just heard constantly just how much, like Tom, someone would sneeze and he'd go, and do you know what? That's why Ben Johnson's so good as an offensive coordinator. He was so good, he'd make a very good head
Yeah.
coach one day. And obviously, the New Orleans, as you mentioned there, the New Orleans Saints are also still in the position of like interviewing and having
You
to
know
get hired.
what's you know what's really interesting about the Raiders? I know we'll come on to them and talk about the Jags as well. The Raiders are the only team in NFL history to never have one of their coaches poached for a job, head
Did not
coaching
know
job,
that.
I believe.
That
It's someone shared an image in one of the group chats. I'll see if I can find it. Yeah, so the last time every team had a coach poached to be a head coach. So you've got most of them have been within the last, I would say, the last 10 years. The Jets, 1989, I suppose, is probably the one of the longer ones, and the Browns in 1988. The rest have all had something in the 2000s, but the Raiders have never had a coach poached for a head coaching job, which I find funny, but also crazy at the same time.
has it been going since 1960 as well?
Mm,
That since 1960, and not once have they brought in a coordinator who was worthy of a head coaching job. That is
mm.
wild.
64 years essentially without having head coach potential uh,
Yeah.
coaches.
Um, to stick on to the Jets for a second. They still haven't hired their GM because this is one point I wanted to make. I don't like this move. I think it's the wrong way round to do it. You
Mhm.
hire your GM, who then hires the head coach. I don't think you hire a head coach and then go and hire a GM. Um, just because of the way the system works, you want to make sure that the chain is working right. You don't miss a chain and then go and hope you find the right link. You get the appropriate chains in the appropriate order.
Yeah,
Well, I don't pay too much attention to this side of things in general every year and note them down and remember them. But has there ever been a point where that's worked, where a head coach has been hired first? I don't know.
I I wouldn't know. It's I don't really pay too much attention to GMs personally. Obviously, I pay attention to my own because he is arguably, I would say, one of the best in the league. But I very rarely pay attention to GM signings at all.
And
Um,
also the
so I
reason
wouldn't
why
know.
Thursdays in April are just nice days for you up until last year. Um, but yeah, so they're still waiting to hire a GM.
I do
I'll
agree
get
with you, by the way. I do think there's a really weird dynamic that they've
yeah.
then forced because essentially you're hoping that whoever you bring in is now going to work with Aaron Glenn. So does that mean that you're looking? Does that the only thing that I could think that they would mess? No, they would do it. The reason you do it that way is they wanted to secure Aaron Glenn, and then they want to find a GM who Aaron Glenn approves of to work with him.
Well, that would be part of my question. Would he now be sat in on those GM interviews? Obviously, you've done the first round of a lot of them. You bring back a few more. Is Aaron Glenn now sat in on those? Because you know from from experience with GMs, that the second a GM is hired, if a head coach candidate is still out there and they still not hired a head coach, the GM sits in on the interviews because it only makes sense. Like, do you like this is my vision? Do you fit within it? I wonder if Aaron Glenn will be sat in on those interviews.
I mean, if I was the Jets, I would have him sat in on them. Maybe not actually doing the interviews, but maybe in some form, whether it's informal conversation to see how the dynamic works that forms part of the whole interview process. I would. He certainly has to be involved somewhere because you don't just because what if they bring in a head coach who, sorry, a GM who has a certain way of thinking, which is the exact opposite to the way that Aaron Glenn's thinking.
Yeah,
We know how that works out. It never works out when you have two
yeah,
disjointed elements going into a draft. And this, for me, is a very important draft for the Jets. Whether the players are out there or not, it's still an important draft because they've got elements they need to fix
yeah.
and fix either now or be stuck in a bit of
Who
a
knows?
limbo situation. So
Yeah. Um. No, I completely agree. I completely. Even if it's just you, right? Go in and ask him about what he thinks needs to be done to the Jets. And if you think what we can do this season is, and he says the same thing that you say, you're on the same page.
mhm.
Just maybe putting a couple of things together like that. Do have, like I say, some sort of say. Maybe it's a little bit of an informal chat. Maybe it's just you ask one question that's just to gain his vision and align it to yours.
I mean, to be fair, what we did in the job that I'm in when we've done it is we have some of our staff go and have informal chats with the candidates before they go in for the actual interviews, more so to just get their feel of who they are as a person
Oh, you're
and
sending
just
plants?
yeah, it's sort of well, we always tell them it's an informal chat and we treat
Yeah,
it as informal chat. It's the ability for them to ask questions, but also just gives us a gauge as to who they are as people. And I think that element would be quite useful because it's like you can talk about what your visions are for the future, what you see the Jets happening, why you've interviewed for the Jets, like what's your purpose for wanting to be GM there, what do you see needing to be done, and I think you can do that on an informal level
yeah,
with Aaron Glenn directly involved in that. It'll give Aaron Glenn the ability to sort of provide his feedback on all the candidates as well as
yeah.
the actual interview process.
And again, like, as we come up to the draft and things like that, we're gonna do such a comprehensive look at the draft. I think over the college pod and hurdle the line, and so much that there's only so much. But I have a couple of points I want to make on it, but I'll save them for future episodes.
Yeah.
The Raiders have hired John Spytek. I believe it's Spytek, but that's how you pronounce it. He was the assistant GM and well, he's vice president of player personnel from 2021 to 22 and assistant GM for the past 2 years, both positions of which were with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's not a bad look. Look, the last the Buccaneers are a well-run organization.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's glad to know that their owners can run one of their sporting clubs correctly. And I'm glad that's the one that they've chosen to run correctly. The other one they don't do very well with, and it's beautiful to see. But the just that seems like a good hire. That's a good cult. That's a good place to work for. They've done so well with so little as well. They've revitalized getting Baker Mayfield in and revitalizing his career, keeping players like Mike Evans on board, keeping players like Chris Godwin in, and well, that's just three players on offense. They've done so well the last few
I think
years, and
it's interesting because obviously he was the director of player personnel when Brady came in
yes, that is
and
true.
won that year.
Also,
In,
that
the,
yeah,
in his last year as the director of player personnel, they won the Super Bowl in that year, and then he became the vice president of player personnel the year after. So and then obviously eventually became assistant GM. So he obviously knows what he's doing and has a very clear vision, and we've seen that with the Tampa Bay because I think that there was always the fear after Brady that things were going to go a bit south. And bringing in Baker Mayfield again was a risk, but it's a risk that's really paid off well.
yeah,
So, yeah, I think it's a for me. I think it's a good role. Whether again, it's for me that this will be a decision on what happens in terms of who the head coach comes in, because the Raiders we know are again very similar to the Jets and the Jags, a bit of a clusterfuck in how they operate. So yeah, again, it's such a difficult role to comment on for me because again, because I don't really follow GMs, I don't really know. I'm only going based upon what I can see in their, you know, their history. So I can't always, you know, go based upon everything. But I think it's all right.
So, one little key piece of information here about John Spytek, and I did not know this until just a second ago. I think we're looking at the same page here. You're looking at one aspect. Not only is he a Michigan man, so good luck to him going forward. Do our school proud. I say that's our school. I never actually went there or anything, but when he was a freshman at Michigan, he was teammates with the then senior Tom Brady.
Interesting.
So then he became
There you go. There's your link.
there you we
You're always trying to find links with these because there's always involvement with
there's
players
something.
and stuff. There's always something.
There's always something. So there's your little tie into helping get Tom Brady on board, I guess, at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But like I say, the way that organization has been run the last few years has been fantastic. So to get someone in from there, and the other GM hiring that has been done is Mike Borgonzi, the previous assistant GM for the Kansas City Chiefs. He has been with the Chiefs since 2009. Started out as administrator of college scouting, worked his way up to GM, but he went through manager of football operations, pro scout, assistant director of pro scouting, director of player personnel, director of football operations, assistant GM. That's a wide variety. He's touched on, like, as a GM, you're gonna oversee three or four different departments: your
Mhm.
scouting, your player personnel, the other bits. He's been in two or three of those different departments. So there's a guy who's going to have a good understanding of all the departments that are going to be working together
Mhm.
from under a GM. So, and obviously he comes from the Chiefs. There's the dynasty.
Interestingly enough, he was the director of player personnel when the Chiefs drafted Patrick Mahomes. Again, I don't know
And
how it's you're clutching at straws to say. I'm just making links in terms of what their role was when the star guy comes in. But
but well, look at it this way: who was the man who was in the room shouting to trade up to get Jared Goff for the Rams all those years ago? Who's the one who scouted him and said, "This is the guy"? Brad Holmes.
oh, of course, yeah,
And when it didn't work out at the Rams and Brad
yeah,
Holmes left,
yeah,
who was
yeah,
he desperate to bring?
yeah,
That there are links to this, and it's
yeah,
all these different departments and places, but they all they there are.
mm,
It's a small world at the end of the day.
yeah,
It is a small world of all these people, and I like the whole. One of my favorite things is when people have a history of scouting as a GM,
mm,
because that's the number one thing you're going to be judged on and graded on is what talent can you put on the field.
mhm,
The head coach will be a head coach will be judged on how well they do with that talent. If you put bad talent on the field and the head coach does well, you'll be fired because, well, you'll overachieve. But if you're putting good talent out there and you can't perform, then that's on a head coach. And
yeah,
if you come from scouting, that's great. But like I say, Bogonzi comes from all most of the facets of being a GM and what you're going to be overseeing. So those are the two hires. And this week we had a firing. Trent Balk of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, what you we I called out the Dallas Cowboys a couple of weeks ago for watching everyone go through loads of head coaching interviews.
mm,
Someone start to get hired and then went, right, we can't deal with Mike McCarthy anymore. You're gone, you're out the door. But that was a contract breakdown.
mhm,
two GMs have already been hired. More two other teams have done like one of the other teams has already done a lot of groundwork and a lot of work and a lot of interviews. So he was probably not far off hiring someone.
Mhm.
You wait until the really good ones are gone, and then you fire your GM and you go into the pool of the rejects. Ladies and gentlemen, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, this is a again, like we said, it's a very odd decision to make. Like, you already know that you're getting rid of Doug Peterson. Why not just take the GM with him? Like, get rid of them both at the same time and give yourself the opportunity to maybe look for a pairing, or maybe, like we say, do the sensible thing, look for your GM, and then use them to hire your head coach.
Yeah.
The fact they haven't hired a head coach either yet, and now they're firing their GM, to me, it just puts them back at square one. Because now that if it was me, you then, like we said, you'd need to go and look for your GM and then go and get your head coach.
Yeah.
But then saying that, Tony Khan doesn't do anything normal.
Yeah.
Sorry, his dad doesn't do anything normal. He doesn't do anything normal, but his dad doesn't
No,
do anything normal either.
none of them do. But one of the things I have read about it is that I think word has got to some of the ownership where head coach candidates have interviewed for the job and gone, I want to work with that guy.
Mm.
And quite a few of them have said, no, thank you. No, I don't, that's not going to be my GM. I ain't
Yeah,
doing it. And I think there comes a point, if that's the case, where you as a head coach, as you as an owner have kind of got to go, you're a problem.
yeah.
You hired Urban Meyer. Look how that worked out. You hired Doug
I
Pearson.
don't think so.
Look how that worked out. He hasn't had a good history of what he's done. And it didn't, but we have spoken about this. There is some talent on that field.
Mm. Yeah,
And you can't you can't deny the talent sometimes. And but at the end of the day, two of those have been first overall picks and with the most glaringly obvious first overall
yeah.
picks in the draft. You kind of could not miss with them.
But he's also then been responsible for bringing in Calvin Ridley and then getting rid of Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
But he has there are mixtures with it. Like there are some players he's done and brought in that have been top draw picks and top draw talent, but he has also made a few mistakes along the way as well. Quite, I would say, quite glaring. I mean, bearing in mind this was a team that were picking Trevor Lawrence in the first overall pick, and their defense has got progressively worse to the point where they were one of the worst in the league this year. Like
Yes.
that's not a mistake. Like you don't just, essentially for me, their only decent defensive player at the moment that really stands out of any kind is Aluakon. And he's not getting held out by barely anyone. So, it just I can see why they've done it. And if it is the reason that they've hired a few and the head coaches that have potential of that they wanted to hire have gone, nah, you're all right. I don't want to work with him. Then yeah, fair enough. You have to get rid of him because it's hindering your ability to bring in a
Yeah.
decent head coach. But at the same time, surely they should have recognized this problem when they look at the last two hirings. Because
Yeah.
you can, like we said, it's fair enough bringing in the talent, and he has done well to bring in the talent that he has, even though he's basically not really had much of a choice in terms of he can't get it wrong, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But how can two head coaches, one of which was a big problem, and another one who, granted, had a good reputation, has done bugger all with a decent offense?
Um, I did like the two GM openings at the moment. I've got a couple of issues with both of them. Clearly, I think the Jags' hand was forced into a fire in this late. But if that was again, like you say, if that was the case, why is it taking you this long to get rid of him? 'Cause it's clearly a problem.
Mm.
Unless you don't know what you're doing and don't know how to identify a problem until someone says, "Excuse me."
Mm.
I've worked under decent GMs before. Trent Baalke's that one of the people I would put under that umbrella. But while we're looking there at teams whose seasons ended, who are looking to 2025. But do you know what? There are four teams in the NFL, Sam. 1/8 of the league left who are looking not to 20, well, they are looking technically to 2025. Not looking to August yet. They're not looking to April yet. They're not looking to September. They're looking to the 9th of February. 2 weeks to go until the Super Bowl. The NFC Championship game and the AFC Championship game will take place this weekend. Which one do you want to start with first? Shall we just get this NFC one out the way?
Yeah, given that both of our teams didn't make it.
Given that this was one of the worst weekends of sport in general for a long
Mhm.
time. For at least I don't know about yourself. I don't know what other sports if you've been let down in any, but
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal lost at the last weekend. Well, no, they didn't lose. They drew horrendously with Aston Villa after being 2-0 up. Obviously, the Texans not being in the Natty after what happened with Ohio and then Ohio winning it, and then us losing in snow. Like,
so
yeah,
obviously
not a
I
great week.
went through on Saturday. The Detroit Pistons played at 9 p.m. Lost. So right, Red Wings are on at 12. They'll do it for us. They'll be all right. By the time the Lions game rolled round at 1, the Red Wings were already 4-1 down to the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's like, right, this is okay then. As always, now it's up to the Lions to pick everyone up. And then at 4 a.m., going, well, that didn't work. Then your head coach gets poached on Monday. And then on that night, the bitter rival of your college football team wins a national championship. Then next day, your other coordinator goes, I did say to Nick last night on the college football pod, I was like, the Samaritans have blocked my number at this point, and it's not a good place to be.
Yeah,
But with that being said, like you said there, neither of our teams made it. We're the two that didn't in the NFC. You were beaten by the Eagles, and we were beaten by the Commanders, and that will be the NFC Championship game, an all NFC East tie. The Commanders at the Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field. The Eagles are the clear favourites. Let's not mess about on this one. The Eagles are the clear favourites, but so were the Lions last week. And look what the Commanders did. Third time meeting this season. Does it get how does where's this game won and lost in your opinion?
I think. I mean, I don't know what the weather situation is going to be like in Philly this weekend, but that if it is just as bad as it will be when we played them, that I think will play a massive part, and it did in our game, and I think it will again. If the weather's the exact same, I don't know. Given the fact we are out, I basically turned my head off to the NFL a bit. But yeah, I think it's an interesting one because the Commanders have this ability to be able to pull out results that you would never expect them to do,
Yeah.
but still have the ability to get battered themselves. Not necessarily bad, but can lose games in that they shouldn't be losing. They're a bit like they remind me of Liverpool the year that Klopp joined. We know when they were just some of the games they were just having absolute fun with it,
Yeah.
and then other games they just couldn't even beat someone like a Nottingham Forest when they would, like that level team before Forest got good. The sort of the Evertons and the I don't know the Sheffield United. They just couldn't seem to get wins again. They feel a bit like that, but there's also a level of fearlessness to the way Jane Daniels has approached these playoffs, which I think is quite refreshing. Um, My biggest concern is Saquon Barkley. It always will be. For me, he is this year's he's the Eagles MVP for me. I think he is just on another level. And if he can put if he, all he has, I mean, we've seen it in the last game and both games against the Rams. All he needs is a lane, and he's
Yeah,
80-yard tutties. Like that's who he is at the moment. And I almost think that playing against your divisional rival when you're the better team overall with better players is just so much better for you. I
yeah,
just think it ends up working for you, and I just think the Eagles just have something this year. I think we looked at them last year. We thought Kelsey gone. What are they going to do? They bring in an elite running back. They bring in that Cam Jurgens has been unreal
yeah,
at center for them, and they've tightened up on defense from last year, and they look more like the defense from 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, and but better, almost better in a way, and that's the scary part. The only issue that I have with it is the only concern that I have is Quinion Mitchell got injured against us. I don't know if he's going to be back for that game. But I tell you what, when he went and when Matthew Stafford was actually throwing the ball, Rogers, for the most part, got absolutely cooked. And so did the guy who came in to replace Rogers. And that
yeah,
would be my concern is that the cornerback depth is poor. And when you've got to deal with Terry McLaurin, who seems to be back, in the form that we've seen him for years, he just it's such a hard one to call because you naturally want to say the Eagles are just going to do what the Eagles do and what they've done all year. But I just think at this point now you can't write off the Commanders. And obviously we know that, Carl's mentioned it to us. He was said they were going to be a dark horse and they have been
yeah.
so far. And personally, I'd rather the Commanders got to the Super Bowl than the Eagles.
Wouldn't we all?
But I don't know. I think the Eagles look back to their best and with a better running back who's best running back in the league for me. I don't know. I can't not see them winning.
Yeah. Um, I know you said a minute ago the weather at Lincoln Financial Field, Pennsylvania, on the 26th of January at circa 3 p.m. local time, with about 4 degrees Celsius, wind approximately at west 19 kilometers an hour, 0% chance of precipitation, 55% humidity, cloud cover 64%. It will be broken cloud and sunny spells.
So no snow. So that take that out of the game then.
I am like this has been a long couple of weeks. I'm very tired. I am very proud of myself for getting through precipitation for the like on a one try. I'm very proud of that one. I'm not gonna lie, but it'll be a dry but chilly day. Very cold. It'll be a cold afternoon, but dry. Um, the sun will set at about 17:13, so that'll be what 5:15 in the afternoon. The game starts at 3 in the afternoon, so fourth quarter getting a bit dark, sun starting to set. It'd be a fun one to. I think it'd be a fun setting to be a part of. I think
Yeah.
that's going to be a good one. I completely agree. It's primarily going to come down to can you hold Saquon Barkley to under 150 yards, 100
Mhm.
like it's so much easier said than done. We spoke about it last week about the Rams needing to do it, and even made the comparisons to Boise State. Can you stop Ashton Genty? If you can stop Ashton Genty, you can beat them. The Eagles are beatable. They
Yeah.
aren't blowing teams away, but when you've got someone like it's very similar to how the Titans were with Derrick Henry and how the Ravens have been with Derrick Henry. But look, they have other pieces like Lamar Jackson as well. But when you have that player who can just put the game on the shoulders and and just go, all right, cool, all right, fine, then I'll score an 80-yard touchdown. It's fine, I'll do it.
The interesting thing is, is Saquon Barkley did put up 150 yards when the Commanders won. Now, granted, the Commanders were playing with Kenny Pickett for the majority of that game, but he still put up 150 yards, two touchdowns, and they lost the game 36-33. If we go back to the week before, so not, it would be week 14, 11 when they played the Eagles. The Eagles won 26-18. Saquon Barkley put up 146 yards, two touchdowns. So I think maybe we should maybe not looking. I mean, to be fair, he also put up 52 yards in the air with two catches. So, um, yeah, I mean that just. I mean, to me, I mean, obviously we've said that if you can, you stop Saquon Barkley. Turns out the Commanders don't need to stop Saquon Barkley. They just let him do what he wants as long as they can score more. And this is what we
Yeah.
said sort of similarly with how they would approach you. If they can just score more than you and keep themselves in front for the majority of the game and force this time obviously force Goff to throw, that's where the issues would come. And maybe if they can try and force Hurts to throw the ball and keep him under pressure, keep him in the box, maybe that's where the issues will come because he'll have to throw the ball. Now, granted, Hurts is still a great thrower of the ball and he has great options to throw to. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a difficult one. And the fact they are 1-1 makes it all the more interesting.
So, just some early information on this one. Well, I say early information. The spread is currently 6 in favor of the Eagles. The over under is 47.5, and oh, I done the money line. That says it all. If I were to ask you, let's play that game. Would you take that spread at mine, or on the spread, would you take Commanders +6 or Eagles -6?
I would take the Commanders +6. I think this is going to be a 3-point game, similar to how it was last week. Last time they played, sorry. I see it being a 3-point game. In terms of the over under, I would take the over personally.
It, I'm with you. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a lot of points. I, so like the little, I know we're not a betting podcast, but some of the little props I think I'd be taking is like both teams to score points in each quarter, even if it's
Mhm.
just a field goal every
Yeah.
quarter. Like it's gonna be, it's
I also wouldn't I
yeah.
wouldn't be against both quarterbacks scoring a touchdown, a rushing touchdown.
No, actually, that's a really good one. Because you're always at the risk of a tush push against the Eagles. Well, I say always.
Pretty much
If
always.
you've got 1 yard to, if they've got 1 yard to go on a third or fourth down, you are at risk of it. If it's like 4th and 9, you're not really at risk of a tush push
Well,
there.
you never know.
To be fair, do you know that watch that be the one, and you just kind of no one's expecting it, so it
Mm,
works because absolutely nobody expects it. I imagine the look on the faces of people would be similar to, when you get a chugger in the street. One of
mm.
my favorite things to do is to walk past as they're going like, "Hi, can I borrow you for a couple of minutes to talk about charity?" And I'll say, "I'm really sorry, I don't speak English, so I can't." And then walk on and watch their faces kind of go, "Huh?" Um, it, I kind of felt, the faces, the crowd, Commanders' defenses just be, eh? And that's how you
Yeah.
get away with it by just a moment of pure, just stun them there and then. So I'd give it a go one day. I'd give it a go.
Maybe
Maybe
not on a
be,
4th and 9, maybe like a 4th and 4.
or maybe be 30, 40 points up in a game first,
Yeah.
and then give it a go for the why the hell not. But yeah, it is a great point you make there that this is a game where QBs can get you with their legs. if they need to.
Both have the ability to do it, and both have shown that they can do it in the game. Obviously, Jalen Hurts, like we've mentioned, it's the touch push on the 1 yard line. So the Commanders, it's just scheming him into a read option and doing it that way, and that he's done it multiple times this year. So
Um, right. So with talking betting, right, it's getting to that point of the week. It's so close to payday right now that like I can smell it, and it's the payday after Christmas as well. So it's so close. Now the one little thing that's really nice, put a couple of quid on a bet. Or something that's even more fun than putting a couple of quid on the bet is going and spending some time with our sponsors, fantasygameday.app, the first and only NFL daily fantasy app created by UK fans for UK fans. Build your lineup. Build your lineup. Make your team compete against fellow UK fans, some podcasters, maybe even a couple of us, maybe even a couple of the other podcasters that we like to work with and talk to on a regular basis. And do you know what you could do as well, Sam, while you're playing all these games? Win a few quid at the process. Could though. It's still a gamble. It's still betting. So
I have won.
nothing.
I've played it probably maybe 4 or 5 times, and I've won twice. So there you go.
And
Not a
this
lot of
this
money,
is
but it's still winning.
this is God. This has got to sound. This is the worst nickname you'll ever be given, and I'm sorry. Sorry. And this is Mr. Fantasy over it. Like this,
Yeah, maybe, maybe not. I'll
Mrs.
take it.
Fletch, Mrs.
I'll
Fletch
take it
looking
and run
over
with it.
like,
I'll take it and run with
it's fine. Like I say, Mrs. Fletch is just like, really?
it.
Okay. Um, no judgment though. I like it. The That's where I was at with it. Right, so and you could win a couple of quid in the process, potentially. All you have to do is go to the link in our bio. Now, Karl is not here to show us where, so there we go, Sam. If you're on YouTube, you can see it. It's right down there. If you are on audio-only podcast platforms, go into your app, go over to the episode, and check the show notes, and the link will be right in there. Download the app, sign up if you haven't already, and then when you sign up, put at the very bottom the code HRDLE. That is HRDLE, hurdle without the U.
Well, unfortunately, there is no hurdle line without you. So
And you will get a free play worth up to £7.50 when you deposit and play for the first time. Because they said to us, right, Fletch, Sam, Karl, Ollie Chapman, Tom, you can get some people over because you've sent them over. We'll give them a little present because we like you. We're grateful for it, so we'll give them a little present. So I don't see why not. And they've got some really good games coming up for the championship games at the weekend. You could win a couple of quid for it, and they'll have a couple going on the Super Bowl as well. So it'll be your last chance until September, I think, with them. But go ahead and potentially get yourself a couple of quid. Double win at the week. If you're an Eagles, a Commanders, a Bills, or a Chiefs fan, go and get some wins in. Go and get a double win in. Or if your team don't win, double. It's still up. You still get a win. Um, with that being said, though, as I've just said, the Bills will play the Chiefs at the Arrowhead Invitational. Wait, no, that is the AFC Championship game at Arrowhead. As always, the first question that always needs to be asked in this situation: can they finally do it? Can they? The regular season record for Josh Allen against Mahomes is impeccable. The postseason record for Mahomes against Allen is impeccable. Can the Bills finally do it?
I don't know. My heart wants to say yes. I really want to see Josh Allen in that Super Bowl final. I really like him as a quarterback. I think he for me has stepped up. I mean, he was already the guy at the Bills, but he seems to have somehow taken it to another level. Like, we talk about obviously Josh Allen's ability to run the ball, and he used to make a lot of issues. He used to cause a lot of issues with his fumbling, with just throwing weird interceptions, losing the ball.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to have any of that this year. Like he just seems to make every single right decision. And even with all those decisions that he's able to make, he seems to have done it with less of a star-studded team around him. And I don't want to put
Yeah.
disrespect on the likes of Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman and that because they've been brilliant for him. But
James Cook has been
yeah,
fantastic as well.
like if you there was, I mean, I remember towards the end of the season for last year for James Cook, it looked like he was losing his place because he had a few fumbles last year. He had a big fumbles last year. And then this year, even then, Ray Davis started coming in. You know, there was the talk that,
There was.
Ray Davis and Ty Johnson were going to take his position. But he just, again, has stepped up and has done really well. And I don't know, there's just something about this Bills team that just look different in the playoffs, I think is the key part here. They look
Yeah.
much better in the playoffs. That being said, the Chiefs are still the Chiefs.
And that being said, we have all over this podcast, and I think even at one point Tom has joined in this conversation of the whole how many times can you just be not very good and still win? And
Mm,
if anything, lose less than you've ever lost before.
mm.
It the whole the Chiefs just they keep finding a way to win. The defense is finding them a way to win. There is the argument which I will neither like be for or against that the refs find them ways to win.
I will be firmly against that. I think that they do, and I just wanted to make this as a point. I know it's something that we've discussed with Tom, and I've backed Tom on this. For me, the Chiefs have not got any more or less decisions than any other team in the NFL this year.
They
The
haven't.
problem is they've just had big ones in contentious positions.
Opportune moments, I think,
Yeah.
is some of the wording I've used this week.
And I think that, Mahomes himself, and we have seen it, Mahomes has been a bit theatrical at times in buying things that like buying flags that maybe shouldn't have been flags. But at the same time, if you're a defensive player and you know that's what Mahomes is like, don't do a stupid.
Clarification for anyone who isn't aware, I wasn't doing. This is not a homophobic slur of any thought. I was like, if you are aware of, if you're in the US and the soccer and the Premier League and whatnot, the ref, every ref, like in the NFL, has a hand gesture or a gesture that they make for people who are hard of hearing, people who just can't hear what the refs say. So they also have a physical signal to go with the call, so you know what they're saying and what it is. In English football, it's the same. There's a hand gesture, there's a movement that is made. That is diving
Mm,
or simulation, as we call it in at times. It's not a full dive, but you are simulating some of that contact.
yeah,
That's what I was simulating. I was simulating the referee saying like he's diving.
but but at the
Wasn't
same time, like yes, he's exaggerated the situation, but at the end of the day, look at what happens. Look at some of the offensive linemen and D linemen when they get pushed and they go down like they've been thrown to the floor. Like it happens. And the thing is, if you're Mahomes is just using the situation to his advantage, and I'll never. I don't like it personally. I don't agree with, you know, overacting on simulation and diving and all of that. But at the end of the day, he's using what he needs to use to win games. And Tom Brady we talk about goats in the game. Tom Brady used to get a lot of decisions his way as well,
yes.
arguably. Whether that was again him playing the situation or understanding the role that he was playing as an individual. Mahomes is doing the exact same thing. The difference is, in my opinion, that NFL fans of rival teams don't like it, and we're in a much more of an era where social media is a lot bigger. And I
Yeah.
think that they just become more sensationalized than maybe they need to be.
And I think opinion becomes lazy. I think opinions as of late have become
Mhm,
lazy on social media. It's one of the things that I've well documented to an extent my complete fallout of love with English football.
mhm,
uh, I say complete. My general, and part of that is just how lazy people are in their take. But they're the takes that are constantly pushed, and it gets
mhm.
to the point where journalists are pushing these takes. These are takes that are now on Sky Sports, or they were on the different
It's like
platforms and channels where like
it's
it's
like this
lazy.
year at the moment, Arsenal with the dark arts. Like we're the only team that have ever played time and done things that aren't seen as morally okay. Like yeah, like
Who did that? Who did that? The
Mikel
greatest manager
Arteta
of
did it.
all
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Well, yeah. And the thing is, Mikel Arteta's done it. But the thing is, it's
Yeah.
like the media, the social media is now peddling the media in in arguably agendas. And I just think that this has become one of those things that gets peddled is that people don't like to see a team so dominant
Yeah.
get decisions given to them,
Yeah.
in my
And,
opinion. And so
and
what they do is they exaggerate it, they pick out every single finite detail of it, and then the media then pick up on it. And that's why Mahomes and the Chiefs are seen as being in the refs in their pockets. And there's all these images now coming out of, you know, the referees with obviously the use of AI with the Chiefs logo on. There's pictures of, there's already some things going around. And obviously they're part jokes where they're saying, um, Patrick Mahomes, there's been what was it, roughing the passer on Patrick Mahomes next week, given a 15-yard penalty given against the Bills. And it's like, there's already that being peddled. And, I don't like it. And I think it's just one of those things that I think as Chiefs fans, you're just going to have to deal with it for now.
and some of them start as sometimes it starts as a joke, but just kind of gets taken too far. Or
Mhm,
you get someone who does have a little bit of that, and it's confirmation bias.
mhm,
So you will see 10 calls get given, and you will pick the two ones that could be considered egregious or considered not right, and they're the two. They prove your point.
mhm,
Um, and It's like I found a couple last week. I didn't really want. I was pissed off at it. Don't get me wrong, and I somewhat agree. And Chapman brought it up on Monday, but I don't want to get into the whole. The same block happened on Goff that happened on Jaden Daniels, except the Lions got flagged for it when Jaden Daniels got hit, but Goff didn't. And both of them were blockers in the scenario. They were not running. They were not ball carriers or quarterbacks. They were blockers. It is what it is. It happens, and neither of those were Patrick Mahomes. And the one thing I
mhm.
hated the most as well, if that was Patrick Mahomes that would have got called, yeah, well, it wasn't, so it didn't.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I've well documented my opinions on bad officiating, more so in the college football than
And more so in
um,
the last couple of weeks.
and more so in the last couple of weeks. And there is an element of bias in it, and there always will be with fans. Particular fan bases don't like others, and when it's your team that's getting the egregious calls, you do get potentially blindsided. I mean,
I wonder.
I've admitted, that Ohio game, I still think a lot of calls went Ohio's way, but when you relook at it, a lot of calls did go to us as well.
I had a
Um,
I had a dream not long ago where there was a team in college football who an incorrect decision didn't go their way, and so they were perfectly justified in their anger. Who just started throwing things onto the field, and it caused a delay of the game, which caused the referees to
yeah,
watch the clip back, and then it happened. Just a dream. Just it never obviously happened in real life, but um, just throwing that one out there, it could be a thing. The I don't want this to be the conversation of the game. I don't want this to be where we're basing it. So I am gonna kind of say, like, again, there's so many ways we can talk about this, so many different ideas we can throw about it. But let's just talk about the ball. Let's not talk about the flags. Let's not talk about the zebras. Let's talk about the ball. The next kind of position, because and I love what you said so far about the Bills. Josh Allen is just doing it and doing it right. He's doing arguably at the highest level of the game. There's one thing having the talent and being able to, like, say, throw the great throw at 60 yards deep, but it's intercepted, and it's great to have all of that. But to be able to know what to do with it, when to do it, how to do it, why to do it is a completely different part. And he's doing it at the best level he's done it. Maybe it's because he's getting married. There's a real thing as a theory that
I
I'm
think
okay with that.
he's a lot happier. I
A
think
lot
it's a
more
thing.
content with life, and I just so we can talk about how good the Bills have been. We'll probably continue to do that, but I want to just mention that we've had this thought about the Chiefs all season, and whether it's right any point now, end of the season, they're going to flick that switch, and then they're going to be hot. The Chapman made the comment on Monday about them kind of dusting off, like going into the cupboard, dusting it off, and bringing out playoff Travis Kelce. I liken it to the same cupboard that you bring out playoff Travis Kelce from the same cupboard you just put in Michael Bublé and Mariah Carey back in after Christmas.
Yeah.
That's when you bring out playoff Travis Kelce. He got over 100 yards at the weekend for a good, at least the start of that game. The Chiefs' offense looked hot.
Mhm.
Maybe some in-game adjustments were made, and that helped the Texans. But in that second half, are we finally starting to see the Chiefs, and are the Chiefs turning up now? Or have we not seen enough yet for them to say, oh, but the Bills could do this? Because the Bills could do this.
Mhm.
And the Chiefs' offense needs to be shit hot because the Bills will score points.
True, but I think one of the things that we know about the Bills' defense is it will give up points because we've seen it in, you know, granted we didn't really see it in the Ravens game too much. I mean, it was only 27-25, but it was 27-25. They gave up points, and Mahomes has significantly better weapons this year than he's ever had before, in my opinion, bar maybe early Tyreek Hill. He's got Nook, he's got Hollywood. He's obviously got Xavier Worthy, who I think is a great addition. Travis Kelsey, Noah Gray. He's got Pacheco and um, Kareem Hunt in the backfield. Like he just has so many more weapons than we've ever known him to have before. And yes, they haven't exactly been great, but my argument always is with this, and when people are saying, "Oh, well, we haven't seen the real um, Chiefs yet. When are they going to kick and hit the ground running?" What's wrong with just winning games? Whether you win it by one score or 10 scores, it doesn't really matter. You still won a game. And that's
Exactly.
the way I think the way that Andy Reid approaches every single game. He already knows that he's got Spagnola's defense that'll do whatever it needs to do to hold up the ball. And he has the best quarterback in the league to rely on with arguably one of the greatest tight ends that we've seen in a generation. Like he just has everything he needs. And why? Yeah, okay, it always looks nice when you put on 30, 40 points and absolutely batter a team. But at the end of the day, when it comes to winning Super Bowls, does it really matter how you win it? It just matters that you win it. So to me, it's I I will never I will never write off this Chiefs team at all because they are always a threat, whether they're at the best or whether they're at the worst. Because they just know how to win games and they know how to be a playoff winning team.
Going over to the betting lines for this game, the spread minus 1.5 in favor of the Chiefs. Well, 1.5 in favor of the Chiefs.
I'd take it either way. Again, I think it'd be a 3 point game. So I would take either. I'd take the Bills or the Chiefs because either way you're going to win on that.
Yeah. Over
But if I was to
under,
pick one, I'd probably pick the Chiefs. I really
o-
don't want to.
over under 47.5. I feel like, and this is the problem for me. There will be one of these games that is over, one of these games that is under. I think one of these games is going to be lot of offense, lot of scoring, lot of points. The other one is gonna be like
Grind it out.
to continue the analogy from Monday that Chapman brought forward, and I just ran with it. The boxing one where it's gonna be it's gonna be one of those boxing matches where just two opponents just kind of feeling each other out for the first few rounds, and I might try and get a dig in, but it's a field goal. I might try and get it, here's my one deep shot. Here's my one kind of trick. Like, it's gonna be a battle. Both
Mhm.
offenses are not gonna show much. They're not gonna push the boat. They're gonna try and play the occasion, play the game. Defenses are gonna step up. That's just where I feel it's gonna be.
Yeah, I, I, I can see this game being something like I don't know, a 17-14 game or something. Just
Yeah.
maybe like a 24-21 or something like that. Something where it creates you need to just if you can sustain drives. I think teams will be sustaining drives, but will be both defense will be on bend don't break. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw a lot of field goals in this sort of a game.
23-20 is my head where my head's at with it.
Mm.
23-20.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Or yeah, I said 24-21, so it's something similar to that effect. I think.
Yeah.
I just don't see. Yeah, I can't see it being over the spread. Might get close to it, but I can't see it being over the spread personally.
I could see this coming down to like if a kicker misses an extra point, if a kicker misses a field goal, if there's a fourth down conversion that's not made, a fourth and short. This is the type of game that's going to get you that. And obviously, the Eagles commanders could very much go down to that. I think that could be relatively close too. I like the spread being less than a score, unlike last week where it was with 9.5 and the commander still won. But
You know what I would love to if I was able to script this game, the way I would love to the way I would love to play it out is it for it to be 14 all going into the final quarter and it go to overtime. The Chiefs to get the ball, score a touchdown on the opening drive or a field goal, and the Bills to get the opportunity to go the other way and to win the game on a touchdown.
on a 2 point conversion.
Well, they wouldn't need it on a 2 point conversion if they got the touchdown because they would have scored.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
So if it say it was a field goal, um, then yeah, so then the Bills would go up the other end, get a touchdown, win it by 3 points, and there would be this whole media frenzy around the fact that the Bills were able to get it done because the only way the Bills could get it done was because the playoffs changed after they moaned about it.
Then the cameras in the state, the on the screen on the TV, half your screen is Taylor Swift head in hands. The other side is Haley Steinfeld looking over at Taylor Swift's box and going, um, no, it has every and let's not pretend that there's been one of these games that wasn't close, particularly, but the Bills Chiefs just it always produces a good game. It's always a good, whether it's a defensive battle, whether it's an offensive. The the score lines have widely varied in whether they've been
it's,
offensive
it's, the two,
masterclasses or defensive, but
it's the two best quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion, coming up against each other. So it's always going to be entertaining.
it is. And if so, give us your money line predict. I'm not going to give you the money line side of things, but Money line, just for clarification, Commanders or Eagles.
I'm going to go with what I want, not necessarily what I believe will happen. I'm going to go with what I want.
So you're gonna tell me what you want, what you really, really want.
Yeah, I want a zig zig now. I want the Commanders.
Thank you so much for playing along. Thank you so much for that one. And then
Yeah,
the
I want
Bills
the Commanders.
Chiefs.
I want the Bills. I would love to see a Bills Commanders final. That's the dream for me. And I think it's the final that everyone wants,
It
bar Eagles fans.
it's the yeah. The Commanders Bills is the final everybody is the Super Bowl everybody wants.
Hmm.
Super Bowl everybody deserves. Probably not the Super Bowl we're gonna get. I'm going to half agree with you here. I'm going to say the Bills do it. I think the Bills win on Sunday,
Hmm.
and we can all at Hurdle the Line be equally miserable watching the Super Bowl. And we're all gonna hate it together and love the fact that we hate it together. But to be fair, like I think Ollie and Karl and that they can't be upset with this the same way we can because we made it so far. Their expectations were different, but I think the Eagles are just too much. I
I
don't think they stop because I'll say this as well. By the way, the Commanders are the 24th worst team against the run, if not in one of the stats. In other stats, that they're even worse than that. They're not good against the run.
Mhm.
They can't. And the most they struggled all game on Saturday was when we were feeding the hot hand that was Jameer Gibbs early in the game. They couldn't stop him. This is Saquon Barkley. They don't stop Saquon Barkley.
I
They
mean,
get
like we
beaten on
said,
the ground.
they've put up nearly 300 yards on the floor against it. Well, he's put 300 yards in the two games on the floor against them. Like I say, that this game for me, it's can can the Eagles stop Jaden Daniels because he put up 82 yards on the ground against them the last time they played, and the time before that when they lost, when the Eagles won, sorry, he put up only 18 yards on the ground. He only threw for 191 yards rather than the
Yeah.
250 yard that he got in the previous game. So
So
yeah, I just think it's an interesting one. But I if I'm going with my head rather than my heart, I would say Eagles would win that match.
yeah.
But
Um,
I want the rookie. I want the rookie to win.
on Monday when Tom, Ollie, and Chapman review the games, we
Mhm.
will know what the matchup is for Super Bowl 59. So this won't make sense anymore. So I want to do it now. In certain betting apps, you can do hypothetical future matchups.
Mhm.
Now, I was not doing this last week, and I was definitely not doing this during the wildcard game because you had about like I didn't count how many games you could actually potentially have as matchup because of all the different possibilities and the way that the seedings work.
Yeah.
But there are only four possible matchups in the Super Bowl now.
Hmm.
How many of those hypothetical matchups? Because I've got them here. If the Bills play the Eagles, the Bills play the Commanders, the Chiefs play the Eagles, or the Chiefs play the Commanders. How many of those matchups do you think the NFC have as favourites?
One.
Nope,
None.
none. The closest it would be
Eagles.
Chiefs Eagles.
Mm.
The
And
spread,
it was always going to be on the Eagles either way.
yeah, it's the judging by this, and this is Bet365. I've got it on. They see the Bills as a bigger threat to the Eagles than the Chiefs is a bigger threat to the Eagles. That's interesting. The two worst spreads, the two worst money line differences are both featuring the Commanders. Both of them are 4.5, not in
Yeah,
favour of the
but
Commanders.
you expect that because probably people are not even thinking if the Commanders get there, they're not going to be good enough to beat the Bills. But in my opinion, they were good enough to beat the Lions. They can beat anyone, in my opinion. If they play the
Yeah,
way they played against the Lions, they can beat anyone. So I think they are very much being under. They're the underdogs of it all,
yeah.
and teams need to not sleep on them because if, like I say, if they do what they did against the Lions against the Eagles, which is possible, they will win that game. And if they
Um,
then, or they just have to keep that train running. That's
yeah, yeah. So think of those two games. So those four games. I'm gonna
Mhm.
play a little game. I know we're not the greatest of all betting podcasts of all time. We're not the most knowledgeable on betting, and that is more better covered by the guys over at Great Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. Not part of the network, but great friends of ours who you should definitely go and check out for betting tips from from UK fans. Can you guess which game has the highest total over under?
the highest total over under. I would say Eagles Bills.
No, that's actually
Really,
third in the list.
really.
Third,
Commanders Bills.
correct. The over under at the moment is set to 53.5 if the Commanders played the Bills.
So is that just based upon the fact that the Commanders throw the ball better
I
and
don't
the Bills
know.
have a poor defense and the Bills run the ball better because the Commanders are poor at the running game? That's the only
But
thing I can think.
this is the really interesting bit though, because in second place is the Chiefs versus the Commanders with a 49.5 over under. So going off this, if the Commanders go through, they expect the Commanders to
Them
go
to get
through.
battered.
That's the highest scoring.
So, but then by the way that they're describing it, the fact that they're saying that the Commanders have the highest, do they have the highest spread?
Yeah.
I'm assuming in both games.
Yeah, yeah. So both games, Bills, whether they play the Bills or the Chiefs, they'd be plus 4.5.
In both games.
Both games
So they're expecting there to probably be a what? Say a touchdown or two field goals in both of those games.
away. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, this is why I'm not good at betting because I wouldn't agree with either of those.
and the bottom two are both the ones involving the
They both.
Eagles.
That's just because
The
the Eagles have the number one defense in the league.
Bills
Surely the
Eagles
Eagles.
is 47.5 over under, and Chiefs Eagles 45.5.
What was the highest one that they had for the with the Commanders?
53.5.
It'd be interesting to look how many teams have scored. How many Super Bowl games have had 54 points or more in them over the last say 10, 20 years?
I'll do that research tomorrow.
Yeah,
Not today.
just it'd be interesting to see because obviously that's a high score.
It
That's a
is.
big score.
It is. That's an average. That's 27 points each on average.
Yeah. And again, if you're
Oh,
looking for them to have a 6 point swing, or sorry, a 5 point swing, you're looking at what, say 20, 29, 26.
that's 3
Yeah,
points.
29. Well, no, it'd have to be more than that. So it'd have to be a 30-25 game.
Yeah. And I get you to 55 points. So you get
Mm.
the over. It's
Don't know how I feel about that.
but the Bills Commanders is a whole score with a 2 point conversion in it ahead of the Chiefs Eagles.
That seems a lot.
Yeah. But
I don't know.
that's how they view it. If the Bills Commanders play and if the Chiefs Eagles play, there would be, like I say, a touchdown plus a 2 point conversion more worth of points in the Bills Commanders than the Chiefs Eagles. That's crazy.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how that changes once the result, like when the actual Super Bowl game has been decided.
And if an injury happens
Well, that's it.
at
Like
the
if
weekend, and
if Mahomes doesn't make it to that final, to the
we
Super Bowl, if say the Chiefs get there and Mahomes isn't there, obviously that's going to dramatically drop that. But also if the Bills get there and the Commanders get there and say, I don't know, Jaden Daniels is missing that game, again, it's just going to change everything. So
we saw Carson Wentz against the Broncos. How many points did they put? I can count them on. None. No, no hands. I can't. I don't need to use hands to count how many points the Chiefs got in that game, which winds me up to though as well. If they could win a Super Bowl and get shut out in the same season,
yeah,
and I know we can make the argument of it's week 18 and they rested
yeah,
all the players. You won a Super Bowl and got shut out in the same season.
and
They could.
shut out by one of your divisional rivals.
Oh, it's disgusting. And lose by 37 points, I think it was in the end. One, those have to be records. Those have to be the
Yeah.
first time that's ever happened. Um, Either way, Sam, conscious of time, we've been going for a while, and I'm very much. We all know what these matchups bring. We know
Mhm.
what all these teams are about. The only one I think we still have questions on are the Chiefs, and what can they truly be still in this game? Are they going to continue the trajectory or not? Either way, I'm gonna be bloody knackered at work on Monday morning because I ain't
Mhm.
missing that. Don't know about you.
I'll be catching it the next day. But I'll be turning it on, not having a look at my phone and watching the 40-minute replay on DAZN. So I'll be able to get to watch the whole game.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be exciting. Remember, if a game is low scoring, don't mean it's a bad game. Just mean it's good defensively.
Mhm.
Always good to remember. In times like this, we take
Always remember, def offenses win you games, defenses win you championships.
quality. I want to get that as a tattoo. I think I'm gonna get that as a tattoo. That's a brilliant quote, Sam.
Mm.
By the way, I can't believe you just come up with that on your own. That was amazing.
I know it's
Genius.
I'm a
This is why you're
visionary.
here. It's why we
Yeah,
have
I'm a
you, and
visionary.
we won't do it without you anymore. That's why. Um, but go enjoy your weekend of football. There's only 3 games left of the season before we're stuck with the UFL. I say stuck with the UFL before we get the
Yeah, but then
UFL
it's one of my favorite
football.
times. It's draft season. I really
It is
like
draft
draft
season.
season.
Um, so have a good weekend, and I will see you. Oh yes, a little bit of housekeeping. There will probably not be a preview episode for the Pro Bowl games next week. Not gonna lie, as much as we would love to, we've worked so hard these last this last season. I think we deserve a bit of time. We're gonna take some time to look at the off season. There will not be a Pro Bowl preview, and I am sorry. You all wanted mine and Carl's and Sam's flag football takes and who
I
can
I
hit.
have put it like this. I'm not going to be watching any of it, so
I will see clips come up on Twitter
mm,
and Instagram, and I'll
I will
go,
not be
"Oh,
watching it. I don't have any interest in the Pro Bowl. To me, it's just it's fun, and that's all it is. But it's not. I don't care for it.
funny story about the Pro Bowl." Actually, I'll give you this one. This is one funny story about the Pro Bowl. My Mrs. Fletch, her best friend in the whole world that she's known since she was 3. Her boyfriend at the time, a few years ago, got really into the NFL. So one day, it was like throughout the season, she texts Mrs. Fletch and says, like, "You're well." I think most of you know my name by now. But Aaron's into the NFL, isn't it? She goes, "Yeah." She says, "Well, XX has got into it. Can I ask some questions and can Aaron help teach me a bit?" And I'm always up for I'm always up for bringing new people on board and helping where I can and whatnot. I very much live by the whole, we were all new to this once. And no question is a stupid question because I have come up with stupid questions and stupid answers still to this day. After being in, I don't know, we all do. So watch for a few weeks and they got really into it. one Sunday afternoon, before this was a flag football game, she gets a text. What the fuck is this? Why aren't they doing anything properly? And Mrs. Fletcher looks at me and she goes, "What's she on about?" It's like, "I don't know. Is there anything on today?" No, I think City played earlier or whatever. I don't know. It was the Pro Bowl when
Right.
it was still a contact football game because I don't watch it. I don't pay attention to it and I haven't for a while. But they didn't know any better and I hadn't explained to them previously. By the way, the Pro Bowl, don't bother. It's not real. It's like an exhibition game. So they were sat there watching players just kind of
Half-ass it.
tackle, half-ass tackle, and it's actually really a bit of a cuddle and a well done, you had a good season kind of tackle.
Yeah.
It was just like half an hour of why aren't they trying? But why aren't they trying? I don't. It doesn't make sense, and I've got. Don't judge it. Next week, better off. But that was one little funny thing I always remember at the Pro Bowl is my wife's very best friend in the world nearly being scarred off the NFL because all of a sudden this Pro Bowl game turned up, and it was not like what was advertised the weeks before. But yes, we will take the Pro Bowl weekend off. We'll do a bit more for the Super Bowl that week. We'll probably do.
Maybe probably have Tom and everyone on maybe for that one with it being there'll be no preview, there'll be no review, will there? Because we won't have they'll have reviewed the
Yeah,
natty the championship games,
I
and
think
then they're going to review. Are they going to review the Pro Bowl?
I doubt it, but actually I think if worst case scenario, well, I say worst case scenario, best case because you get more of us. I've got a plan for something to do also during Super Bowl week, so we can get 2 episodes worth. But but we'll see who can join because it's the Super Bowl. We need to go all out. We need to have a lot of fun with it. Um, but yeah, we won't see you for this show next week. But so this is the second to last preview show
Of the
until
2024 NFL season.
until September. Sam, it has
Ooh.
been one hell of a ride. Karl, I know you're not here. Been one hell of a ride, and so all the little guests and people we've had on this has been a hell of a ride. And yeah, we'll see you in 2 weeks.